Welcome to our second Innovation Café. We're happy that you all have logged in and joined us. So what are we doing today? So we're going to be going over just a quick refresher for those of you who weren't with us last time, a few slides about the Innovation Studio as well as about the Innovation Café. And then the last item that we're going to be working on is how to scope a project. So we're going to be doing a live demo of a project. And then we're going to, as time allows, send you all into breakout rooms to practice scoping out a project with the project charter. Martin, if you could also drop the project charter into the chat box when the time is right, that way folks have access to it, that would be great.
Got it.
Awesome. So a little bit about the Innovation Studio. I think we've probably worked with all or most of you before. The names and faces here are familiar today, but the purpose and our purpose of the Innovation Studio is that we believe in the power of people to drive positive change. None of us is an island, and we believe that through mobilizing innovation, through mobilizing collaboration, is when we get to some really, really exciting results, and that pays dividends. So that's part of the impetus for Innovation Café, is because we really want to connect with other folks who are doing exciting work. Our mission for the Innovation Studio is that we will guide Maricopa County in revolutionizing how government solves problems. And the way that we do that is through facilitation, training, and coaching to improve process efficiency and customer experience. So go ahead and give me a thumbs up if you have been to, if you've participated in a project with the Innovation Studio, or if you have attended a training session with the Innovation Studio. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up so we can see who may have worked with us before. Oh, cool. So a lot of you have gotten to do that before. Very nice. And so that's really what we're aiming to do is teach and guide a new way to solve problems. So the Innovation Café, this is, and I see your message, Susan, no problem. The Innovation Café is a pretty new adventure for us. And what we really wanted to do is to build a community in Maricopa County around innovation and improvement. We heard stories from people who were working on really cool and exciting things, and we thought, wouldn't it be awesome if we could convene groups of people who were excited to talk about innovation and who wanted to learn and share out best practices. And so that's really the meaning of this space, is where folks can come and share ideas and really build a community together. What we also want to do is eliminate silos through Maricopa County departments by convening folks from across the organization. So it looks like we have folks from 5, 6 departments today. And so these are folks who perhaps you wouldn't regularly interface with. And so it's meant to break down some of those silos. We also want to find opportunities to share successes and challenges. And we want to teach, share, and scale best practices across the county through skill building and information sharing. So this is really not meant to be Kelly's soapbox or the Innovation Studio soapbox. It's really meant to be a community and a communal space where folks can share out and learn together. So that is the Innovation Café. The commitments that the group put together last time were to be present. So if you took the time to dial in, give it your full attention to participate. This is only as good and as meaningful as we make it. What's said here stays here. We imagine as this continues to evolve that people may bring difficult challenges to share with their community. And so we ask for everybody's discretion and as people are sharing information out. To be open and honest, it's really not about blaming or shaming. It's all of us are learning together. The last one is to show patience. We're all learning. The Innovation Café is new. A lot of us are still learning how to work together, how to use new systems and technologies, and to show grace and patience for that. And then I wanted to open it up to see if anybody else has another commitment that they'd like to propose to the group. Any additional commitments? I think we called these like rules or expectations last time, but I thought that sounded so like, ugh, you know. So commitments I thought was a little bit friendlier. So if anybody has an additional commitment that they'd like to propose, go ahead and drop it in the chat. And if not, I'm going to assume that we're good to continue rolling with these. So let's roll. All right. So I think I've met most of you before, but for those of you who I haven't met, my name's Kelly Rao. I'm the Innovation Studio Manager. I've been with the county since June of 2020. Prior to coming here, I worked in healthcare quality and compliance. Quality management and process improvement are very, very similar. However, I do find process improvement to be a bit more flexible and exciting. So that's a little bit about me and my background. And I wanted to see who we have here today that wasn't able to join us last time. And I think with the size of our group, I'd love if our new attendees could come off mute instead of putting in the chat and tell us your name, your role, your department, and what brought you here. So if you are a new attendee and you feel brave enough to come off mute, we invite you to do so we can say hello to you, or if you prefer to do it by chat, that's okay too.
Do you just want us to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Hart. I'm a management analyst with adult probation. I'm new to the agency. I started in January, but I previously worked as a management analyst and a performance evaluator for the Department of Audits in Georgia, the Georgia General Assembly, and the Kentucky General Assembly. So that's me.
Thanks, Sarah, for joining us. Did your colleagues, Heather and Ryan, drag you here?
No dragging was required. I'm kind of a nerd, so I like the continuous improvement thing. So
cool.
Hi, Tom Pafford, also with adult probation and management analyst, working with Sarah, Heather, and Ryan. So also very new, a few months newer than Sarah.
Okay.
So
bunch of newbies, myself included. I think if you're at the county less than 2 years, I still count it as new. All right. Go ahead, Karen.
So I'm Karen Scott. I'm the Finance and Procurement Division Manager for the Flood Control District. And we have a program here that I participated in probably 4 or 5 years ago that is a leadership program. And one of the things that we did during that was attended an innovation thing. The Innovation Studio wasn't in place at that point, but there was still some of that going on. And it's just something that intrigues me, and I like it because there's always something you can look at in a different way and learn something and try and figure out how to do something better.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us, Karen. And then anybody who's here for the first time, I'm not sure, Jen or David, were you guys here last time?
I tried to. This is Jen Waller with Maricopa County Parks. I'm an operation manager for our department, so I get the fun of all the parks. And to summarize it real quick, I love change, and I love staying current and creative. So this was right up my alley. And I tried to be on the last meeting, but there was all kinds of weird technical things. I couldn't get into the meeting. I was able to catch up. So,
okay.
Thanks.
Well, we're glad you were able to join us.
And David Dions with the Office of Contract Counsel. I think I was in part of the first meeting, and then I had to leave early. But so I'm just happy to be here, and always eager to learn new ways to improve the way we do things.
Thanks, David. Good to see you again. And I see, Tara, you dropped in the chat, probate administrator, and you love finding root causes. That is awesome. And you have an eye for continuous improvement and identifying waste. That's my personal opinion of Tara. All right, so just a refresher, last time that we convened the group, we asked folks to participate as part of their sign up in a survey to say, what are you most interested in learning about? And what folks most wanted to hear about was each other. So not me, but they wanted to hear what other folks are working on. And so I'd love to hear from the group if folks have started anything or are currently working on anything, maybe folks could share out one project or initiative that you've started, finished, or been working on since we last met 2 months ago, as it seems like that's the catalyst or the reason why a lot of people have come. So anybody up for sharing out something that you've been working on today before we start with our project charter? Any brave souls? Tara, I'm sorry, I have to pick on you just because we did that presentation together recently. So maybe you could tell the group a little bit about what we worked on together.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so we actually just finished up an initiative to, I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the kind of the modality we used. It was like the 5S.
Yeah,
Right?
you got it.
Okay, yay, 5S, like the Marie Kondo kind of is a reminder from the Netflix series. So it's like how to keep your stuff tidy kind of thing. And so we were using that method to clean up our shared drive. So our S drive was off the chain. It was we had tons of folders, subfolders within subfolders, and then no documents in that subfolder. It was pretty fun. So we came together. There's a team of us that we went through this pretty structured process where we cleaned up our shared drive, got everything organized, and now have a system to keep it organized. We're going to be doing an audit here in a little bit to make sure that it stays organized. We did a survey more recently with here in our department, the Public Fiduciary's office, and most people reacted favorably, which was awesome. And people can find their stuff now, and they know where to save things, so that everything is more accessible, and that we don't have, and we're not taking up memory that we shouldn't be taking up. So that's a win-win.
And thanks, Tara, for sharing out. So yeah, we were working on a project together, and as Tara said, there were just thousands and thousands of folders. It's a department of what, about 50 folks? Yeah, 50 folks without any controls in place. So everybody was kind of dumping files, folders, changing things. It was madness. And so we went through a 5S process, which was originally used or is quite common in like the manufacturing environment, but it can also be used for digital files, or like I did it on my kitchen cabinets in my pantry. So it's a pretty simple Lean Six Sigma tool that you can use to organize any space. And as Tara mentioned, if you've been reading, or if you read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, or if you watched the Netflix series Marie Kondo, she doesn't ever say 5S, but a lot of the principles are there. You're doing a lot of the same activities. So yeah, we were excited to launch that and excited to see that it was meeting our customers' needs pretty successfully. Cool. Anybody else have anything that they've been working on that they'd like to share out about? No? Okay. Well, we'll go ahead and dive into our project charter. Maybe everybody's like, I just need to get my hands on that charter. So we'll do some practice there. All right. So I wanted to ask, project charter is really, really important. I think it sets the foundation for your project and its success from the very beginning. I have found that when I have not done a good project charter, or if I have not done one at all, that it is very common that things go off the rails and I don't have a tool to pull it back in. And so I'm just curious how many folks have used a project charter before, just so I know your level of familiarity. So you should see a poll popping up to see, how much you have used a project charter. Cool. So for most people, it's never. So this is a great time to practice. And then for others, they say a few times, not an expert, and no one said all the time, like, I'm an expert, I've got this. So Sarah, it looks like you used to use an audit plan when you were a performance auditor, which is similar to a project charter. That sounds about right. And Ryan, you know what it is conceptually, but you haven't had the hands-on practice. So that's what we'll be doing today. Is just, this is meant to be a safe space where we can practice, make mistakes, learn. I have asked Heather to be my brave volunteer to help with something. So a project charter is something that, and I'm going to give just a little bit of overview of how and when to use it. So a project charter is something that is done at the beginning of a project. It's really hard to put together a project charter after you've already started something or after you have already gotten things going. At least that has been my experience. So a project charter is something that you do at the beginning of a project when you're beginning to scope things out. It's most typically done between the project lead and your project sponsor. Your project sponsor is typically somebody who is in a manager or supervisory position and who has given the green light or authority for you to work on the project with their team. And so, for example, with Public Fiduciary, I was working with them on their 5S initiative, and their project sponsor was Shawnee Patterson, who is the fiduciary manager, I think is the right title. And she was somebody who had the authority within the department to direct resources, to clear up roadblocks. And she was the one who really helped shape what is success going to look like for this project. So again, you use it at the beginning of your project, and you use it to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. Something that the project charter really forces you to do is to think about what does success look like for this project, and to start thinking with the end in mind. And so as soon as you're starting a project, I like to think about what is my end result here? What's my goal? So I know what I'm driving towards. Otherwise, I think being in a project can feel very aimless if you do not have a project charter. Your group is there and everybody's kind of like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What are we trying to accomplish? Have any of you ever had that experience with a project or initiative that you've been working on? And if so, give me a thumbs up or a reaction in the chat. Yeah, okay, I've definitely had that experience too, where I'm like, what are we trying to accomplish here? So the project charter is meant to tease those things out so everybody's clear on what you're doing and why. So we're also going to be sharing the slide deck with you all, but I wanted to, the project charter was dropped into Zoom, and Martin also shared it out by email, but I wanted to make sure that folks were aware of some resources that the Innovation Studio is putting out there. So we do have a customer-facing website. It's maricopacounty.sharepoint.com/sites/innovation. And once you're on our page, if you go to downloads, you're going to see some tools. We're still building this out, but we're adding new content all the time. So we have resources about the Innovation Studio. We have all of our slide decks from Innovation Café are going to be here. We have resources for if you want to set up a Kanban board. We have resources for a project charter. We just put that up. And then from last Innovation Café, we also covered the weighted decision matrix. So that is now posted. And so our goal is to continue standardizing and putting up tools that can be downloaded by folks. So make sure to check out this space on SharePoint if you have not yet already. In addition to our downloads, we have videos, and we publish when we have trainings and other events. So to find the project charter, if you'd like to do it through SharePoint, you go to our SharePoint site, go to downloads, go to project charter, and then you're going to select those 3 dots and hit download. So that will provide you with a copy of the project charter. So that is a little bit about how to access it. Let me check, does everybody have the project charter up and available? Go ahead, give me a thumbs up if you're good to go. Cool, I see your thumbs. Not every project is going to use every component of the project charter, and so we can sort of discover that as we go along. But I thought it may be helpful for you all to see a live demo of some of these areas of the project charter. And then what we're going to do is we'll send you guys into breakout rooms to work on your project charter with a teammate and get some hands-on practice with the tool. So what we're going to be looking at today is called a project charter. I think this is one of the most vitally important components of making sure that your project is off to a good start and is going to be successful. I know that I have definitely been in projects, and I know my colleagues have as well, where we perhaps have not scoped it correctly, or we don't have a great project charter in place. And what this can lead to is that folks aren't really sure what they're going and where they're going. And so the project charter, usually this is filled out between the project lead and the project sponsor. So I'm going to go ahead and go through each section, and then we'll do a mock project together. So in the first section, you're going to provide a brief summary of the project and the relevant business case. Why is this project important? Why is your department or why is your organization deploying resources to work on this project? The next section is the problem statement. So you're describing the problem that the project is meant to address. And so you talk about what is the problem or issue, when it started to get noticed, what's the magnitude, and what's the impact. So really digging into what is the problem at hand and providing any data that you may have to show the impact or magnitude of the problem. Area 3 is your goal statement. So if you are doing a traditional continuous improvement project, you'll have very specific metrics likely that you're targeting to improve. This section is meant to be your SMART goals, which many of you are probably familiar with. The specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-bound. And so with the Innovation Studio, we usually seek for a 50% improvement in time, cost, or quality. That's our project standard. However, your project may have different goals, or your project may not have really clear success metrics in this case, and we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. The next section is the project scope. Many projects have gone astray because the scope was not fully fleshed out, and so this section is meant to protect the project lead and the project team to make sure that your project is successful and that you, your sponsor, and your project team have a clear understanding of what's the scope. So that includes what is the process start or the beginning of that process, what's the end of that process, and then what is in scope and what's out of scope. Sometimes I'll see, for example, that project teams will have ancillary processes, or there will be other departments whose processes or policies impact this group, and the team wants to discuss or spend time and energy discussing what's going on with those other departments. However, sometimes those things are out of our control. And so when I say out of scope, it means out of our control. So something that we can't impact from this project team, or perhaps, for example, the department has already said we don't have the finances to invest in a new technology solution. So that's something else that could be out of scope. The next section is our dependencies and risks. So this is an important section to talk about anything that's going on within the department or organization that may be a potential risk to your project. For example, let's say that you're seeing high levels of staff attrition, and so project team members may leave in the middle of your project. That would be a big risk, and so you would need to talk about a mitigation strategy with your sponsor upfront to make sure that you had a plan to address it. Or your project may have a dependency, so maybe your project can't do specific activities unless another department or business unit completes their activities or deliverables first. So that would be a dependency. The next section is our project milestones and deliverables. So these are pre-filled to talk about what we usually do in a rapid improvement event. However, it can be modified to any project that you're working on. It's in 3 sections. The first is milestone. Milestone is not meant to be every single minute task that you're working on for the purpose of your project. Milestone are more your big key items, the big sections or phases of your project. Those are your milestones. Those are your big, really important project components. Purpose and deliverables. This talks about what's the purpose of that specific milestone and any deliverables that are required as part of that milestone. So for example, when you're first beginning your project, a really common deliverable is your project charter. So that's something that would be called out. And then it's also important to note your due date. The next section is our project team members. And so this is anybody who will be assigned to work on the project with you. We generally recommend project teams of about 5 to 7 people. Anything larger than that and things can start to get a bit unwieldy. However, we know that some projects do need to have a large team. And so in this section, you would detail all of the project team members, their role, responsibilities. So what are they committing to as being assigned with the project? What are they committing to do? A weekly time commitment. So for example, let's say that I was assigned to work on a project and the weekly time commitment that I had was half an hour. That I could commit to a project, then that might be a red flag or a warning sign that we may need to find a different project team member. And then any notes. For example, it's really common that we will ask our project team members to participate in a 4-day rapid improvement event. And so that's something that you could put in the notes, or if you have other specific sessions or needs from your project team members, the notes is where you can call those types of things out. Communications, these are the things that your sponsor wants to know about and when. So we do, for example, a project status update every 2 weeks by email. And then we also communicate if there are project delays based on what our executive sponsor wants to know. So sometimes based on the sensitivity or urgency of the project, they may want to know immediately if something is delayed, or for other projects, they may say, hey, if it's anything more than 2 weeks, please let me know. So that is really just dependent on what your sponsor and executive sponsor want to see. And there may be other communications that your sponsor, that your project may require, like maybe every time you get, if you get new data, or it just really depends on what your team is interested in seeing. Attachments, if you have any like baseline data, charts, etc. We put all of our stuff on SharePoint, and so we insert a link for where you can access project materials. We have here our version history. The project charter is meant to be a living document. So as you update items, you would do that here. And then we at the Innovation Studio, our projects are approved by the assistant county manager and deputy county manager. Those are executive sponsors, in addition to the director of the department, who's usually our project sponsor. So this may not be the same for projects that you're working on. You may have different levels of approval, but these are the folks who we need to get their sign off before we move forward with the project. So those are the nuts and bolts of what is in the project charter. So now we're going to walk through with an actual example. So in this fictional example, we're going to say that the Innovation Studio wants to work on its inventory process. And this is fresh in my mind because I just cleaned out our storage closet, so this is like fresh. So the creation date, that'll be whichever date that you're writing the charter. So for us, that's 8/5. And then revision date, as I mentioned, the project charter is a living document. So if or when you are updating your project charter, you would update this little table here. So the project summary and the relevant business case, this italicized information can be deleted, but they're meant to be cues so that you know how to fill it out. So let's say I'm going to say the Innovation Studio is having challenges with its inventory. There are always too many or too few items. People cannot find what they need. Inventory is also impacting projects as people do not have the correct materials in order to complete a project successfully. these project impacts have started to cause concerns with our customers. This is a fictional example. Our inventory is not that much of a hot topic, but I could see how this may happen. So now our problem statement. So we're talking a little bit about what is the issue. The project summary talks a little bit about that. And actually, I should make a note here. It is requested that the Innovation Studio project lead works on streamlining the inventory process and hearing from customers on what is and is not working for them about inventory. This is what we would call a rough draft. It would need to be cleaned up with your sponsor, but so let's talk a little bit about our problem statement. So the problem or issue is the inventory process is inefficient and causing customer issues. The problem started to occur, let's say it started 6 months ago. How big is the problem, the magnitude? So this isn't something, we'll say that we're getting 5 customer complaints per month. Magnitude or cost of inventory is not known. And then what is the impact when the problem occurs? We'll say our Innovation Studio team members do not have the necessary resources, customers, Innovation Studio not being prepared with correct supply. So the next section that we're going to go into is our goal statement. And so, as I mentioned, the Innovation Studio aims to have 50% improvement in time, cost, or quality. So there are several metrics of success that we could look at. We could look at time, let me see. We could look at time to obtain materials. We could also look at customer satisfaction or complaints. And these are just examples. We will usually choose a few, and we'll have a primary metric and sometimes some secondary. And then we'll also say reduction of excess. Metrics that must not be impacted. This may be particularly salient if you are working, for example, in like the regulatory departments, or if there are specific like licensing timeframes, et cetera, that you cannot change. So the project start, we'll say that the project starts when a member of the Innovation Studio requests supplies, and the end of the process is when the requested item is received. So items that might be in scope could be the process to order supplies, the timeline to order, and perhaps out of scope would be things like we're not going to be able to change our vendors, right? So even if we find that there are issues with the vendors that are causing some of this, we don't have, part of our scope is not to switch vendors. Let's also say it's also not within scope to get more money for supplies. That's not something that we're able to do. And then maybe we're also not able to example. You can see how in or out of scope is utilized. So let's say a risk is that for this project specifically is that the person who is usually the process owner, the person who's usually helping to put together the supply order and to purchase those in partnership with Innovation Studio. Let's say that position is vacant. And so we'll say process owner role is vacant. And so at this point, we would discuss a mitigation strategy. And maybe our mitigation strategy is that we are going to appoint and train an interim process owner to oversee inventory. This way we do have a point of contact, but your mitigation strategy will focus entirely on whichever your dependencies and risks are. So the proposed milestones and deliverables, I'd say these are pretty good in terms of what we would be aiming to do with our project. However, what you would start to talk about with your sponsor are your timelines. Usually we find that the pre-work and data collection, depending on the availability of data and how much information there is, it may take 2 to 4 weeks for some of this pre-work. And so when you're scheduling out your due dates, make sure that you're accounting for all of the activities and deliverables that go between. We usually find that the pre-work phase takes about, like I said, 2 to 4 weeks. The RIE sessions, we usually do this over a period of 4 days when we're meeting live in person, and these are 4 full 8-hour days. The solution implementation usually comes a few weeks after the RIE sessions, and then the control plan, or when you're monitoring the implementation of your project, that usually goes on for about 90 days post-project is our standard. So the next section is the project team members. So some of the project team members that you're always going to have, you'll have your project lead, and you'll detail what responsibilities they have, their weekly time commitment, and any notes. You'll also usually have a sponsor, a process owner. The process owner is the person who is familiar with that process and can give you a lot of the nitty-gritty of how it functions and is responsible to oversee that process. The sponsor is the person who has the authority and influence to be able to authorize resources to work on this project. They can help remove barriers and roadblocks. And we find that having an active and involved sponsor is the #1 indicator of project success. We find that if sponsors are not really invested, that message tends to trickle down through the organization and folks aren't super interested in the project. But when we have really visible active sponsors, that turns to be really, really positive. So then you'll put in your weekly time commitment of each project team member. We'll just say team member. You'll put in their name, the responsibilities for the project. And again, this is a living document, so your responsibilities may change, weekly time commitment and notes. So communications, this is where you talk to your sponsor about what do you want to know and when. And so we see if, how do you want to know about just general project status updates? And then what do you want to know about project delays? So let's say the executive sponsor, the assistant county manager, says that she wants to have a phone call if the project has gone over 7 days. And so that's what she wants to know about. And then you'll see if there are any other items that your project sponsor wishes to be kept in the loop about. We won't have any attachments at this phase, and then we would put in a link here if we had that all set up. The initial release, so that's what we're doing today, woohoo! And no changes since this is the first one. So usually the way that we do this is we actually do the project charter live with our sponsor to fill it out together. Sometimes this takes a few sessions. And then once you've done that, you go for review and sign off. You get make sure that your sponsor is good to go with it. And then you also get the deputy county manager, or if you have an executive sponsor, you would get their sign off as well. So that's a little bit about how to use the project charter and an example of a fake project. If you are scoping a project and you have questions or issues, reach out to the Innovation Studio. We'd be happy to help, or it may even be a project that it would make sense for us to work on with you. And our next session, so we are every other month, every Tuesday, or the first Tuesday of every other month. So we sent out a placeholder invite. Our next session is going to be October 5th, 11 to 12. So go ahead and reserve the time, and we're also sending out those recurring invites. And that wraps it up for our Innovation Cafe today. So as Martin said, we're going to be posting resources and sharing out information, but thank you all so much for joining. It was really good to see you all and to hear about some of your projects that you're working on or have worked on in the past.